So our goal today is in part to connect with each other, because one of the things that's so important is finding your community. And when you find your community, you find that parents have information that professionals don't have, and also some of the professionals become part of the community as well. That's why we have Dottie still working after her retirement here with us. But the three major issues that I wanted to talk about were the impact of a new diagnosis, how you interface with the medical world, because what do you do, how do you help kids through some of these procedures that are very difficult, and then living in the world with facial difference, where I'm going to put most of my emphasis. So, new diagnosis. I just wanted to say a word about this, since I don't think I said much about it last year. Is, you know, when a baby's born or somebody has any kind of medical difference, it's usually, even if you knew going ahead, even if you knew before the baby was born, it creates some different feelings and stress for parents, and it right away plunges you into a medical world. And we're going to sort of say that that's not what people expect or wish for, and we know that, even though we're here to be there for you in that. But it also creates different reactions from friends and families who want to be very supportive and say, wow, this is great, welcoming this new person into our family and our community, and at the same time they're not sure what they should do to offer support about the medical needs as well. So it creates sort of a little bit of a conflict right at the start with a new baby with a medical issue, any medical issues. Again, people don't know whether they should say yay and congratulations, or whether they should say, oh no, what can we do to help you right away? And I think that's it's sort of like a robbery of parents who have a wonderful new baby to have that be the first entry in the world. And we also can see some separation, some issues in bonding created by babies right away needing medical intervention, as opposed to really being able to be with their families right away. And I think our goal of being supportive in that, of course all of you are well beyond that moment, but just to remember that you've gone through this course in a different way of being a parent than many people have. So I'm just putting that out there. The other piece I want to sort of say is most people don't say, wow, I really want more health care. I wish I could see my doctor more. Oh my goodness, what is it, you know, like, what can I do to get to the doctor more often? That's not what most people say. So for fun, just to start us on a better note, we find that children are even less in favor of medical care by this Onion News report, if you can hear it.
While Congress debates how to provide health insurance for America's 9 million uninsured children, a surprising study released today finds the vast majority of children do not want health care. Joining us now is the study's director, Gerald Fisher. Tell us about this study, Mr. Fisher.
Well, we surveyed over 2,000 children and found that across the board they were strongly opposed to doctor's visits, vaccination programs, and essentially every health care service some politicians are saying government coverage should provide.
Now, we're seeing those survey results here. You asked the simple question, would you like to go to the doctor more? The majority of respondents shrieked no.
Right. Leave me alone. Don't make me go. They were extremally passionate on the issue.
I see. Now, why do you think they feel so strongly about this?
Well, it's clear these children are worried that increased government funding for health insurance is a slippery slope to socialized health care.
So you're saying this is a political issue for them?
And a moral one. When we asked them if they see universal health care as an unfair burden to certain taxpayers and would they like a lollipop, almost all children said yes.
Really? This obviously comes as a blow to politicians who've been calling for universal child health care coverage.
No, exactly.
After the results of your study, the majority of senators are backing a bill that will cut all public funding for children's hospitals. It would close approximately 9,000 of the outdated, unwanted facilities. Now, have you heard any response to this announcement from the children themselves?
Absolutely. The kids are thrilled, Andrea. They're saying, goody, I want to go home. Unplug me. I want to go to grandma's or the movies. Basically, they'd rather be anywhere but in those hospitals.
And it looks like they're going to get their wish. That's great to hear.
All righty. A little crazy, but it is true that children probably don't like health care as much as we do. It's just, obviously it's meant to be a little bit of a humorous thing, but we have to remember, we are asking kids a lot to go, they're going through a lot when we bring them to the hospital and what we ask them to go through. And they probably, and many of them would say no. So all of us, I think Chelsea and Robin and I are really here to help kids get through some of these procedures, and some of these procedures are pretty dramatically difficult. So we want to do everything we can to make sure they feel supported through them. And the procedures also cause a great deal of anxiety for parents because they're thinking, is my child okay? What's going to happen? Both for medical reasons, if they're getting surgery to try to help them breathe better, hear better, see better, protect their eyes, or even if the surgery is related to looking a different way. It causes anxiety for kids and parents, so we hope to be there for you. Dealing with pain, obviously, again, we really want to be there. Learning relaxation techniques. This is something, if people are interested or have going on, that after the break we can discuss more, all three of us, and of course Dottie, to everybody here. And people who've been through it can discuss and tell you what they've done to help both manage the expectations about what these surgeries are going to do, but also how do you manage the pain, manage getting through them in the most reasonable possible way so that you feel good about it at the other end. That's what we want. We're with that, with the surgeries, it relates to self-esteem because we want kids at the end of the day to feel better about themselves and like they haven't had to endure more than they have to related to their medical issue. So, and procedural support is right there. Like, so while you're having a procedure, who can be there to support you? Often that's going to be someone like Robin, actually during a procedure can be present. And also, Chelsea and I can help knowing what a procedure is going to have and what's going to happen. So the thing that I think people don't realize also is sometimes appearance change, even if society thinks kids are going to look better at the other end of it, sometimes it's hard for kids and families when at the end of the day their child looks different than they did before, even though that's what you're wishing for and hoping for in that surgery. So I think even providing support and discussion around that aspect is important. For any of these things, we have also the medical coping team on top of the people here. Is a team of people at Children's to help kids get through procedures. And furthermore, even in psychiatry, just because you have a craniofacial issue doesn't mean you don't have other psychiatric issues. So we're there to try to help, if you think your child has anxiety or depression, and or ADHD or any other psychiatric issue, we're there to help you in our med coping team. And the advantage of going through med coping as opposed to general psych is the people in med coping, such as myself, all work with kids who've had medical illnesses and surgeries and understand how that might relate to what else is going on. So this is just a little nod, and look at that cutie. This is just a little nod to, things change at different ages. So once, I know this is a parent of a 17-year-old, it's true for all of us, that whatever you think you've solved at one age, something different comes up at another age. I'm not probably the only one who's dealt with that. So with our preschoolers, one thing that we're trying to think about is, how do you talk to them about having a medical issue? How do you let them know? How do you answer their questions in a way that feels both honest and good to you? So those are some issues that we're really able to offer support around. So you have your preschool and they say, hey, why is my ear like this? Or why do I look the way I do? Or why do I have a tracheotomy? Those kinds of questions. And you don't always anticipate those questions because they've had those differences their whole lives, but at some point they start to have some awareness and ask you questions. And people want to say, well, how have other people answered these questions? How do you have kids feel as positively as they can when you come up against kids and their awareness of a difference that they have from other kids? And that's, again, a moment of self-esteem awareness that you want to go for in the preschool era. The other thing that starts in the preschool arena but goes more into the entering school age kind of time is that this is a time when kids are away from parents a little bit more once they get to school. Like when they're preschoolers, they're rarely away from parents or a very trusted preschool teacher, nanny, babysitter, grandparent, somebody like that who's with them all the time. Somebody who's thought quite deeply about how to help them interface with the world. But once they get to school, they could have teachers who've never seen someone with Apert syndrome before, or whatever the diagnosis is. And so the parents, usually, we're going to recommend to you, try to educate the people around your child about how they should support your child, but also minimize the impact of other kids asking questions and bullying, those kinds of things that can go on. But in this age, other kids are starting to become aware that your child might have a difference in appearance or a medical issue if they have it, whether they have hearing aids. Kids might want to say, what's that? Why do you need that? And helping kids start to answer some of these questions on their own becomes very important at this age, and having them feel like they have an answer to those kinds of concerns is critical. And teen years, again, kids are even more in the world, and they're asking questions like, what am I going to do grow up, and who am I going to date, and how's that going to work out for me? So helping kids deal at the different ages with the different dilemmas that come up in terms of their greater advocacy for themselves in a medical world, their greater ability to be in the world answering questions, dealing with community reactions to how they look, all of that becomes, as you get older, you get more and more responsibility towards those kinds of things in the world. But I think at every age, kids have questions that we want to think thoughtfully about how to help them be their best selves to get through. So I like this concept of the destination postcard. I've become very enamored of it because it's the concept that if you don't have an idea about where you want to be or what you want to change, it's very unlikely to change that. So if you say to yourself, I don't know what's my goal for myself, you're probably not going to get there. This morning I talked to a patient that I hadn't talked to in a really long time because she emailed me that an emergency was going on with her daughter. And as I'm driving here, I said to her, well, what are you hoping the outcome will be? What do you think she needs? And she said, well, I didn't think about that. But it's very hard to think about what you should do if you don't have an idea about, A, recognizing what a problem or a goal could be and how you might want to get there. So what we're going to think about, like, I think it's good for all parts of life. I don't think it's only for kids with medical issues. I think it's for all of us. I want to get better at tennis, which I have to so I can continue to beat my daughter, who's 17. Who thinks I have a short amount of time for that to work since she's on the varsity tennis team? All right, at least one of us thinks that's not going to work a lot. I'm joking a little. I really want her to beat me. That's actually surprising she hasn't yet. But we have a goal. When I think, let's say we use that silly tennis goal. If I want to get to that point of being better, I'm going to actually have to practice and play tennis. I'm going to have to think about how do I keep my fitness level up? How do I do that? So whatever goal you have, we sort of think about where is that end point and what are the steps to getting toward them. So if you think, I would like my child to have self-esteem, let's say that were an issue you were concerned about. Like most people have that issue about their child, whoever their child is. Every age has challenges to self-esteem for every child. But let's say that were your goal. You think, well, what are the areas in which that's a concern? What would this look like for me not to be concerned? So that's our destination postcard. And imagining and dreaming where you want to be is going to affect your outcome. So, and everyone has a unique path. It's not as though every child has to be an A student, wind up at X school doing, becoming an accountant. Not everybody has to have that outcome. So you want to sort of think about your child's unique path and how to help them get towards what their path is. Hopefully it's a psychologist, like Patrick. All of us should be psychologists. I'm just joking, of course. There's other paths. Maybe. But a healthy narrative promotes courage and confidence to try new things. If your narrative is, I really shouldn't go out much, I don't want to be seen, I'm not really good at things, and that affects actually how you interface with the world. So we want to help kids sort of think about who they are and how they get to their own destination. And some of those stories have to do with, how am I different, how am I the same? How has having 25 surgeries affected me? And has that made me stronger? What has that done? And not only thinking about things in black and white terms, but of course I've gone through more things than other people, but here's what I've gained from that. I have a greater knowledge of medical worlds than most people, for example. That could be a positive outcome about it. Or I've shown that I have endurance and courage because I've gone through it. And sometimes they'll say, but I cried during it. And you're going to say, well, you're not brave if you weren't afraid. So if you were afraid and you did it anyway and you got through that, that's a lot of courage. So I think finding ways to frame things that kids can feel good about is a plus. Developing armor for all of the things the world brings to kids is going to be important. And think of finding your friends and family. So if I asked any of you, would you rather have 10 acquaintances or one really good friend, I think I would be very surprised to find anybody in this room who said they wanted those 10 acquaintances instead of that one good friend. So again, finding the people who mean something to you. And in that healthy narrative, obviously, if we're thinking about self-esteem, I'm just defining it for you as the way you think about yourself as a person. And we want within that to recognize character, quality, skills, and accomplishment. And when you feel positively about yourself, you accurately judge the views of others. But if you feel poorly about yourself, you may inaccurately judge the views of others. This is really part of the cognitive behavioral therapy. There's a really corny story, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. I think it's sort of a joke or parable, but it's very relevant. So this guy is moving to a new town. Two people are moving to a new town, and there's a guy on the edge of the town gardening, and the first guy comes up to the guy gardening and says, what are the people in this town like? I'm moving here. And the gardener says to him, well, what were the people like where you just were? And he said, they were terrible, they were awful, they were just so mean and selfish and bad people. And so the gardener says to him, well, you'll find the same here in this town. And off the gentleman goes, and then the next guy comes. This town apparently has a population boom, new people are coming. So the next person comes, and he says to the gardener, so I'm moving to this town, what are the people like here? And the gardener again says, well, what were the people like where you're from? He said, oh, they were salt of the earth, great people, helped everyone. And of course the gentleman says, that's what you'll find here. And there is some truth to the fact that we do get a little bit about what we're looking for. And that's what we want to sort of think. And if you think about yourself in a negative way and you think about the people around you, it's in a certain way, it affects how you feel. And it's funny, I mean, the worst, that's why we started talking about who's the worst bully. I made this one myself up as I was reading, but I do think that the worst bully to us is usually ourselves. And what are your automatic thoughts you say about yourself? What self-messages do you give? And as parents, what do we model for our kids? So when I was driving around, when my daughter was 2 or 3, I wasn't aware of what I was doing, but one time she was in the back seat in her little car seat, and I heard her say, nincompoop! And I realized that I used the word nincompoop a lot when driving about myself. You know, and I actually often said, oh, what an idiot. Like, often about intelligence, which I don't know what that means. I think people pick their area of whatever their vulnerability is. I often made negative comments about my own intelligence when I made a mistake. You know, what an idiot I am. Things that are global. And I recognized it only because I had that mirror of my daughter reflecting back to me what I said. So I stopped doing that because it was a wake-up call that I didn't, much as I didn't care if I called myself all those mean names, I didn't want my daughter calling herself all those mean names. So I think, again, we have a lot of things that we model, so be careful because there's a little bit of the concept, you get what you give. What you model is what your children will do. The number of parents who say, well, I'm taking away your screen time, the number of kids who say, well, I'm going to do X to you is pretty high. If that's a strategy you use, that's a strategy you'll get back, even though it's much more appropriate when we do it. And it's funny, after reading this book, the Self-Esteem Workbook by Lisa Schaub, a couple weeks ago as part of this, they talked a lot about what people say to themselves, and I was very interested in that concept. So I was working with one of my other patients who doesn't have craniofacial issues, and I said to her as we were talking, what do you say to yourself when you look in the mirror? She does have issues about appearance though. And she says, you're ugly, you're stupid, I don't like you. And I said, do you ever say, wow, you have beautiful blue eyes? She said, I never say anything like that. And I was actually unaware of what her self-talk to herself was. But I think this is even a question we can inquire, and you could ask yourself, when you look in the mirror in the morning, what's your first thought? Is it like, wow, I got this, I look good? Or is it something else? And I think we can all practice finding, we all have something very attractive about ourselves. Every single person does, so to find that, at least comment on that to yourself as opposed to always finding the flaw. Usually people find the flaw. And it's the same thing as when you have people in your community. If you have 10 people in the community and there's one really mean kid in your class, it's likely that you focus and give that mean kid in the class their words more power than the 9 kids who never say anything mean and or the 2 who always say things that are positive. So we want to actually decrease the power differential of the meanest bullies, both ourselves and the kids who are mean. So how do we deal with the worst bully, which is ourselves? We don't have to call ourselves that. I just thought it was fun to come up with it. It's just fun to identify that the things we do to ourselves aren't always that great. So one thing is to identify those self-messages. So I think often they're automatic and we don't even know. And when I said to you guys, what do you say when you look in the mirror in the morning? You might not even be aware of what you're saying, or it's just automatic. So if now that you're aware of it, you have a chance to change what you say to yourself and help your kids change what they say to themselves. So even making a plan to shift and block that thought is a useful thing to do. Now, if you say to yourself, just don't think it, that's not that effective. It's kind of like the whole story about the pink elephant in the room that you just don't think about, that you can't stop thinking about because you've told yourself not to think about it. So One thing is just to even notice, I'm having that thought that, have a little blood spot here, or whatever, wherever, I don't even know where it is, somewhere there. I'm thinking that thought about how I have that, and then you can say, do I really care about that? Is that really important? Is that what people are going to notice? I could reduce the intensity of my thought about that particular facial feature I have, or I could try to replace it with, wow, I have eyes like my dad, and that matters to me. Something like that. So once you recognize that you're having these self-thoughts, you can try to change them. So that's something I would recommend, and even talking with your kids is, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? You don't even have to suggest, you don't have to say, hey, I know you're having a lot of negative thoughts when you look in the mirror, so we're going to try to stop that. You can even just say, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? And you can say, hey, here's what I see when I see you. And parents almost always see the beauty in their children because they're beautiful. So, even pointing that out to your child. Here's what I see. What do you see when you look in the mirror? What do you think when you put on that outfit? Those kinds of things. And then if they say to you, I think, wow, I don't like how my ear looks, then you can sort of think, I just picked on it, I'm sorry I'm picking on ears. You can sort of think, well, here's what we're going to do about that. Well, one thing is, do you want to think of it, like maybe if there's a surgery coming up that's going to deal with it, that's a time to think about it if you wanted to. Or you could say, wow, that's just one thing. I wonder how many people notice that. You probably notice that more than other people. Here's something else you can notice about your face. But once you know that there's an issue or that there's something going on, you can think about what to do about it. Now, getting away from what other people do, we want to think about how do you deal with people in the community and their reactions to a child who might look different in some way or have a medical issue. So there's an increase in staring in novel situations. If you've gone to the same market 85 times, the people there don't stare. They say, hey, that's Billy, that's Joey. They know you. They're not likely to stare. In school, where you've been in that school for 5 years and everybody knows you, again, it's less likely to have staring. But let's say you go on vacation and you're in a totally new place, that's where you have more likelihood to deal with staring. The first thing that we do is sort of say, is there a difference between curious staring and cruel staring? And in general questions as well. We want to sort of differentiate cruelty and curiosity. So cruelty is when someone says, why do you look so funny, or you're so ugly, or something. Now we can't doubt that that's cruelty. But when people are curious, you have a slightly different response to curiosity than cruelty, and just say, oh, I was born, like I had a little girl who I just adore. I see her periodically now, but she doesn't really have mental health concerns, unfortunately, so I can't see her that often. But when she was little, she had more mental health concerns. I remember she was like 5 or 6, and she had about half of her face was red, and she was in the waiting room in psychiatry. And I have to remember, you're not going to meet the people with the best inhibition in our psychiatry department. So some little kid comes up to her. I heard this as I'm coming down the hall to pick her up, and this kid said, hey, what's wrong with your face? I was like, oh my gosh, this poor kid, my heart dropped. Like, this poor kid coming to my office has now been traumatized by seeing me, by virtue of being there. And this little girl, to her credit, she just smiled and she said, you know what, it's just a birthmark. I was born that way. And I can't tell you how that made my heart sink. She was not bothered in the slightest. She was completely prepared and she knew what to say. And it did, and that was just curiosity. And then the other kid skipped off, and that was the end of it. If you want to deal with programs that are more set up, About Face from Canada has a wonderful school entry program. Like, there's ideas about the first day of school. In a new school, you can go in with parents and kids and say, here's my trach, here's my whatever hearing aids, here's something else about me. And sometimes it's really good to explain that to the other kids early on, and then you don't have to deal with staring or questions because everybody knows what's going on. But if somebody is staring, how do we help kids know what to do about it? The first thing is, I do practice this. We do some role plays with kids about managing staring. First thing is to keep confident and not let that staring take you off your mark. The other thing is to make eye contact. And I learned this trick from working with kids with autism, that you don't actually have to look people in the eye for them to think you're looking them in the eye. You could look at their nose, and it pretty much looks like they're making eye contact. So, Karen, I'll pick on you, and I'm going to look at your nose and tell me if you can tell. Can you tell I'm not looking you in the eyes? So I didn't make eye contact there, but it looks like I am. So helping kids sort of think if they don't want to make eye contact, they can make nose contact, and then it's kind of funny for them. Also, smiling at people when they're staring usually stops people from staring. And I have kids who like to take that power position that you don't have to be subject to people staring or making you feel uncomfortable. That it depends on the personality of the child. Not everybody has my intense personality, but you know, so you have to sort of work with your child's personality. And if they're very introverted, you can't have them have fun by making the other person look away. But some kids like the idea about staring longer, and other people, you know, like making the other person have to look away. And it is kind of fun. You notice if someone's staring at you, if you stare at them intensely and just increase your gaze and just intensely look at them, they will stop. You will win. It is kind of fun. So for people who are less evil than I am, you can also just make a comment. Like even if you say, hey, like we're in Boston, everything is driven by the sports. All you have to say is, hey, how about the Red Sox, Bruins, Celtics, and people will, like, or the weather, hey, you know, like, oh, finally a nice day. Like, people then will stop and you distract them from staring at you. But I also tell kids, and this is actually a surprise to little kids, that you don't have to be polite to people who are being rude to you. And it's actually a hard lesson for kids because they've been taught to be polite and they don't discriminate. But if someone's staring or saying something mean to you, you can say, I'm not talking to you, and walk away. And that is surprising. I mean, you don't have to say to them, I've got a gun, I'm going to kill you, or something inappropriate, but you can say, I'm not talking to you. I don't have to answer that. I'm not dealing with you. You don't have to be polite to rude people. We've all learned that from callers who call us on the phone and want to sell us something, that we just hang up on them. But that was hard at first for you, if you remember. I don't know, and is it still sometimes hard for people to do that? Someone calls and says, you know, like I'm calling from the police, but now what's this up? And you're like, all righty, so good. We're all in a position where we don't have to be polite to people who are rude, or they're a prince who's suddenly going to give us their fortune if only we give them our bank info. We hang up on those people, and we want to teach the kids to recognize those people as well. So the kinds of questions kids with a facial difference deal with are, how did it happen? Can I catch it? What is it? Does it hurt? Will it go away? These are just sample kinds of questions. And I say this because I say people aren't that creative in the kinds of things that they come at you with. So you can anticipate them and help kids prepare an answer to the kinds of questions. And then they're not taken aback by the questions people ask them. So this is what I call the PYA, which is a prepare your answer. And I'm sorry for people who were here last year, I'm also very enamored with the idea of preparing in advance for the kinds of things you're going to deal with that people are going to ask you. So we can't control what other people come at us with, but we can control what we do, and we can predict it. So one day I was out with my dad, and his name was Louis, really, but he went by Larry. And some guy, they asked his name, and he said, my name's Larry Brunfman, and the guy said, oh, Lawrence of Arabia. And I said, that was interesting. He said, it's not that interesting, like twice a week somebody says Lawrence of Arabia. So people aren't really that creative. They have the same kinds of things again and again. So because people are predictable, you can have a set answer. And consider the age and development of the person you're speaking with. Again, somebody with a disability themselves who says, hey, blah, 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 like they're not trying to be mean, but they also, that doesn't mean they're entitled to your history. Well, when I was born, I had this surgery, that surgery, although in my evil way, I think that would be kind of fun. I don't think it would necessarily be fun for the kids who feel they are obligated to answer questions. I think really learning simple, straightforward answers, like, I was born that way, it's fine, doesn't hurt, as my 5-year-old patient said something along the lines of, or my mouth wasn't finished when I was growing up, you know, when I was born. I'm going to have surgery about that, or whatever it is. Come up with an answer that's not, and you think about in each of these answers, there's nothing negative about them. I was born that way, that's how my mouth is. My ear is just different. These are not negative ways to think about it. By the more and more they say it, the more they start to feel, this is just the truth of how I appear. Prepare your answer too. Again, neutral words. It's my birthmark. That's kind of neutral. Say only what you feel comfortable saying. I say to people, if it's a person in the supermarket, they're not entitled to your medical history. Practicing, I've told you once, and I'm not talking about it again. Some little kids who can't say anything, they get sort of immobilized. I've even taught them just to scowl, and they're allowed to do that. They're surprised that an adult's saying that you can go. Again, it needs to be revised as you get older. And remember that what they say in that moment, they're saying to themselves. So that's how you build self-esteem too. And again, people have humor. I had a kid, he had a creative mission that he was going to come up with a different response to everything. I don't know that it hurt his self-esteem, but again, he was who he was, so he would say things like, You know, I was in a nuclear accident, I'm the latest superhero. I'm like, his goal was to come up with a different answer every time, which was part of the prepare your answer. And some of them were really creative. He even went as far as Chernobyl, which is outdated. I mean, he really, and he had fun with it. And the look on the people's faces when he gave them his answers. I mean, this is how they look on my planet. I can't remember all of it, but they were really fun. And he enjoyed it, and he enjoyed the, you know, startled reaction he got. I think that's a rare thing that would work for only the person, but it tells you you have to really work with the person in front of you. Most often kids feel sort of inhibited, and that's where we really want to get them sort of feel like there is something they can say. They are not subject to what other people view them. They have their own answer. Also think about your body when confronting people who aren't being nice. There's a big difference between a posture of this versus, right? And they talk about power postures. You know, okay, someone says to you, hey, what's going on with your ear? Be like, I don't know. What, do you have a question? Versus, you know, so even practicing your posture. And there are power stances and there are defensive stances. Again, making eye contact and also there's tone. I can say, oh, you know, I like birthmark. Versus I can say, that's my birthmark. Do you like it? That's a very different answer. And of course what I said was different too, but also my stance was. And some people like to carry something that they sort of see as a lucky charm or a helper. Like a lot of times kids carry a stone. We can, because a lot of people benefit from these kinds of things, you can go into a lot of gift stores and find a stone that says believe or courage or strength. Something that kids can hold on to that they feel enables them to have more power. Teasing and bullying, again, take advantage of our anti-bullying climate. If you can report bullying to schools, you can write a bullying report. Kids who are engaging in bullying will have to face that. We have to be all working together to make sure that schools are safe for kids in every which way. So there's an increase in teasing in elementary school versus younger kids. And I think kids are learning more about being upstanders and saying things. So there was someone in my office, and whatever group it is, there was somebody in my office on Tuesday who made a derogatory comment about a trans individual in his community. It was a parent, not a kid, believe it or not. And it was something along the lines of calling the person a he, she. And I said, you know, that's really not a way to talk about people who are trans. They find that very hurtful. And I think all of us coming up, it's harder for me to do it in my job because I'm not supposed to be politically changing people as a psychologist. I'm supposed to be helping them. But even still, I think as much as you can in your community, when you hear things that are offensive on any line, the more of us come together about it, the better. It's just a belief. And that's what we saw in Wonder, of course, you know, when you get people who finally stand up for other people. Bullies do seek a reaction. That's another thing to remember. And I think to think for the kids, whose opinion's more important, mine or the bullies? And also to think about, sometimes it helps to think about why the bullies are doing what they're doing, why they have a problem. And I ask them, is that something you're worried about for yourself? 90 to 95% of the time the answer is yes. And I think when bullies are saying things to kids about their appearance, or saying, often they're concerned about their own appearance, or how they fit in, or their popularity. So sometimes I say to kids, you know, maybe they have some of their own problems that have nothing to do with you, because that is probably the truth. But if you say to them, that hurts my feeling, and cry, that's probably what they're seeking. So the idea, a lot of times people will say, ignore it. Well, if you ignore it, they'll up the ante until they get you to respond, so I'm not a big fan of ignoring. If you say that hurts my feelings, it's like saying A+ to many of these kids, because that was their intent. They don't say you're ugly, and they didn't know that wasn't mean. So I think even saying, building the armor and saying, oh yeah, all right, whatever, not letting it get to you, but also having something to say back, preparing that answer. Even if the prepare your answer is in your own head, they've got troubles, that's why they're doing it, could be your answer. So, or reframing it. Yeah, okay, so you called me four eyes, so what, I have glasses. You know, there were a bunch of people who called me four eyes when I was a little kid for my glasses, and for a while I didn't even understand what they were saying because it just was so silly and crazy. So, but then I actually have no trouble with wearing glasses. I could wear contacts and I like my glasses. I feel they can protect my face, my eyes, there's a little bit of distance from the world. I like them, and I did when I was a kid too. So it never sustained because I never had my own issue with it. And I also just thought, what's their trouble? And I think the more that you have that action and reaction, the better it stops people. So, but you should also consider when you should tell adults when this is going on and when you should report it. We can watch a little bit of Lizzie. Do I dare try to? She's got the best range. Do people know Lizzie Velasquez? Oh my gosh, you're going to love Lizzie.
I had to deal with bullying a lot, but as I said, I was raised very normally. So when I started kindergarten, I had absolutely no idea that I looked different. No clue. I couldn't see that I looked different from other kids. I think of it kind of as a big slap of reality for a 5-year-old because I went into school first day decked out in Pocahontas gear. I was ready. I went in with my backpack that looked like a turtle shell because it was bigger than me. And I walked up to a little girl, I smiled at her. She looked up at me like I was a monster, like I was the scariest thing she'd ever seen in her life. My first reaction was, she is really rude. I am a fun kid and she's the one missing out, so I'll just go over here and play with blocks or boys. I thought the day was going to get better, and unfortunately it didn't. The day kind of got worse and worse, and a lot of people just wanted to have absolutely nothing to do with me, and I couldn't understand why. Why? What did I do? I didn't do anything to them. In my mind, I was still a really cool kid. So I had to go home and ask my parents, what's wrong with me? What did I do? Why don't they like me? And they sat me down and they said, Lizzie, the only thing that's different about you is that you're smaller than the other kids. You have this syndrome, but it's not going to define who you are. They said, go to school, pick your head up, smile, continue to be yourself, and people will see that you're just like them. And so that's what I did. I want you to think and ask yourself this in your head right now. What defines you? Who are you? Is it where you come from? Is it your background? Is it your friends? What is it? What defines who you are as a person? It's taken me a very long time to figure out what defines me. For so long, I thought what defined me was my outer appearance. I thought that my little tiny legs and my little arms and my little face was ugly. I thought it was disgusting. I hated when I would wake up in the morning and I was going to middle school and looking in the mirror, getting ready and thinking, can I just scrub this syndrome off? It would make my life so much easier if I could just scrub it off. I could look like the other kids. I wouldn't have to buy clothes that had Dora the Explorer on it. I wouldn't have to buy stuff that was bedazzled when I was trying to be like the cool kids. I would wish and pray and hope and do whatever I could to pray that I would wake up in the morning and I would be different and I wouldn't have to deal with these struggles. It's what I wanted every single day, and every single day I was disappointed. I have an amazing, amazing support system around me who never pity me, who are there to pick me up if I'm sad, who are there to laugh with me during the good times, and they taught me that even though I have this syndrome, even though things are hard, I can't let that define me. My life was put into my hands, just like your lives are put into yours. You are the person in the front seat of your car. You are the one who decides whether your car goes down a bad path or a good path. You are the one that decides what defines you. Now let me tell you, it could be really hard to figure out what defines you. Because there are times where I would just get so annoyed and frustrated, and I don't care what defines me. When I was in high school, I found a video, unfortunately, that somebody posted of me, labeling me the world's ugliest woman. There were over 4 million views to this video, 8 seconds long, no sound, thousands of comments. People saying, Lizzie, please just do a world a favor, put a gun to your head and kill yourself. Think about that. If people told you that, strangers told you this. I cried my eyes out, of course, and I was ready to kind of fight back, and something kind of clicked in my head, and I thought, I'm just going to leave it alone. I kind of started realizing that my life is in my hands. I could either choose to make this really good, or I can choose to make this really bad. I could either be grateful and open my eyes and realize the things that I do have, and make those the things that define me. I can't see out of one eye, but I can see out of the other. I might get sick a lot, but I have really nice hair. Thanks. You guys are like the best little section right here. Why did you lose my train of thought? Okay, where was I? Hair. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I could either choose to be happy or I could choose to kind of be upset with what I have and still kind of complain about it. But then I started realizing, am I gonna let the people who called me a monster define me? Am I gonna let the people who said kill it with fire define me? No. I'm gonna let my goals and my success and my accomplishments be the things that define me, not my outer appearance, not the fact that I'm visually impaired, not the fact that I have this syndrome that nobody knows what it is. So I told myself I'm gonna work my butt off and do whatever I could to make myself better, because in my mind, the best way that I could get back at all those people who made fun of me, who teased me, who called me ugly, who called me a monster, was to make myself better and to show them, you know what? Tell me those negative things, I'm gonna turn them around and I'm gonna use them as a ladder to climb up to my goals. That's what I did. I told myself I wanted to be a motivational speaker, I want to write a book, graduate college, have my own family, my own career. 8 years later, I'm standing in front of you, still doing motivational speaking. First thing, I accomplished it. I wanted to write a book. In a couple weeks, I will be submitting the manuscript for my 3rd book. I wanted to graduate college, and I just finished college. I'm getting a degree. I'm getting a degree in communication studies from Texas State University in San Marcos, and I have a minor in English. I really tried to use real life experience while I was getting my degree, and my professors were not having it. But I wanted to have, lastly, my own family and my own career, and the family part is kind of down the line. My career part, I feel like I'm really doing well with it, considering the fact that when I decided I wanted to be a motivational speaker, I went home, I sat in front of my laptop, went to Google, typed in how to be a motivational speaker. I'm not even joking. I worked my butt off. I used the people who were telling me that I couldn't do this to motivate me. I used their negativity to light my fire to keep going. Use that. Use that. Use that negativity that you have in your life to make yourself better, because I guarantee you, you will win. Now, I want to end with asking you again. I want you to leave here and ask yourself what defines you. But remember, brave starts here. Thank you.
I find her really inspiring. I'm not sure I would show her to kids though, because it's a little traumatic, the issues of what happened to her. So when you're feeling vulnerable about your body, there's 2 things you can do. One thing you can do is become very avoidant and avoid social encounters, use clothing to conceal a difference, use hostility to keep other people away. Or you can actually try, avoidance is a very common reaction to anxiety, but you could also go right out there and figure out what's your response, what would you like your response to be? And that you can use friendliness to put others at ease, humor, take the initiative to guide interactions, practice a variety of strategies that can help you through. I just wrote in a little bit about anxiety because I think there's a lot of, first of all, anxiety is rampant in our culture. It's not only our kids, but kids throughout. But if you add in feeling or looking different, that just adds another thing to be anxious about. And I love Mark Twain's quote, "I'm an old man and have faced many troubles, but most of them have never happened," which is true. We worry about a lot of things that haven't even really happened. But I just say, thinking about how to manage that anxiety is a big part of helping kids. And we can talk more about it, if people are interested in this topic. But what I'm going to sort of say is, one of the main issues with anxiety is that avoidance worsens feelings of helplessness and makes you feel like you can't manage things. So I had a kid who was supposed to go to a bar mitzvah this weekend, a patient, and he was afraid. He has a lot of social anxiety, and I wasn't sure whether his parents were going to help him figure out how to go or not. But I really wanted them to, because I think when you avoid it, if he doesn't go to that bar mitzvah, at the end of the day, he's going to feel like, I could never have managed this. Thank goodness I didn't do that. So facing things in graded, successful ways really helps overcome anxiety. But I also like the concept of the 3 CBT questions that help you think about, change your thoughts. So if I go to school, people will make fun of me. Let's say I'm worried about that. I go to a new school, people are going to make fun of me. That is a worry. And the question is that, should we just say, oh, no, they won't? Well, no, not if that's likely. So let's say I'm worried that an alien is going to come into this conference right now and ask me a very difficult question I can't answer. Very unlikely, because I can answer every question. Just kidding. So the question again is like, how likely is it? So the first question is, when you're thinking about the alien, of course, that's unlikely. When you ask the question, how likely is it that someone will make fun of me in a new situation, there's a chance that that could happen. So you could say, well, that might happen, or it might not. It's not definite that that's going to happen. That doesn't happen in every situation. But, you know, sometimes, rarely, that happens. How serious would it be if that did happen and somebody made fun of you or stared at you or looked at you? And then the question is, usually kids think that's much more serious than it actually is. So if the answer is, that's the end of the world, I can't live, I'm just going to ruin everything, we want to change their feelings about that a little bit. But the question is, how serious is that? Well, that would be kind of a bummer. And it's not nice that they would do that. But, you know, you could still find other people that are nice. If there are 10 people there, 9 people probably won't do that. So again, we're trying to shift thinking in this. But the third one is the most important here, which is, so what skills do I have to cope with it? So in the case of the alien, how likely is it? No, but if I ask myself, how serious would it be if an alien came here and asked me a question I didn't know the answer to? The answer is, that's not serious at all. It doesn't really matter, because there are other people here who can help. They're, you know, not knowing something isn't the end of the world, all of those kinds of things. Then what skills do I have to cope with it? Well, I have other colleagues I'm going to triage that question to. Or I'm going to say, wow, you know, that's a very good question, I'll try to find the answer. So again, what skills do I have to cope with that situation? So in the case of the situation of, you know, going into a new place, well, I could look away, I could stay near you, I could wait before I interact with the other kids, I could ask you ahead of time to tell all the people that I'm coming and tell them what to say, all of those things, so thinking about that. But thinking errors are really like the idea that that's the end of the world is really what creates a lot of anxiety. So we want to sort of look for these thinking errors and help kids with them. So ruminating, getting stuck, again, the same thing. Thinking about the part of your body you don't like again and again, and it's always on your mind, even though you should be watching Avengers Endgame instead, whatever it is. So catastrophizing, it feels like the end of the world because those kids are, one kid is not going to be nice. Mind reading, thinking that we know what other people think, and thinking they can read ours. So a lot of times people say, well, I know they're thinking I don't belong. Well, they may not be thinking that. They may be thinking, hey, do I belong here, which is much more likely with kids. They're very self-centered. They also might think that things are set in stone and can never change. So these are thinking errors we want to work with kids. First of all, we have to identify what the thinking errors are and then work with them. How can we help the kids change the channel? Distance from negatives by either writing down or talking about them. How can we get some body relaxation? So the 7 reactions to the losing tennis match is just something that happened to me. So I go watch my daughter's varsity tennis team in Cambridge play, and they're not the best team on earth, and well, in our league at all. And we went up against a team where everybody was better. All the other players were better. So we had 7 girls on our team, 3 singles and 2 sets of two doubles teams. So that's 7 girls altogether. Every single one of our teams, our people lost 6-0, 6-0, except 2 of the matches they got 1 game. So it was 6-0, 6-0, or 6-0, 6-1 for every match. So every single person got creamed. And you know, here I am, the psychologist, coming to watch the match, and I was very interested in the 7 different reactions to being in a situation where someone is creaming you at a game, and the kinds of ways they think about it. So the girl who played number 1, who doesn't usually play number 1, she's a very nice girl. I like her a lot. She's very successful in a lot of arenas. She's also a great viola player. So you'd think, like, but she's on the court and she's like, oh, like she's like beside herself. Like you can tell. I can walk up to that match and tell that she's losing. Just by her demeanor, by her like her like, and then she came off the court and I said to her, wow, you know, well you hit some good shots there. She's like, no, I didn't. And I said, well, you know, maybe you could get it next time. And she's like, I'm never going to beat that girl. So again, like this is one reaction. And there's another girl who I don't know very well who played 3rd singles, and I went up to her after the match and I said, wow, that was a tough match. And she said, yeah, you know, but I didn't know she was losing because I came up late because I didn't come at the start of the match. I don't want to be too helicopter, what can I say? So I watched a little bit of it, and I could tell she was losing because her demeanor was the same as if she was winning or losing. And I said to her, well, you know, you're a freshman. I don't know what grade she is, but you have a lot of room to grow. She said, I'd have to put some work into it, but I could. And again, so like there's seven, like all the kids are in the exact same position, and it was very interesting to me to watch the 7 different reactions. And I gotta just say, I'm on a mission about number 1, even though of course it's not my job to be on a mission about it. I know her parents, and they're very nice too, but they're kind of rough on her, so I have a theory about it. So I went and watched the next match, and she lost again. And I said, did you have some good shots? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, I said, you ever play the same team next week? And she said, yes. So, well, I'll take you to Starbucks if you get one more game than you did this time. Do you think you can do that? And she said, yeah. I said, all right, Starbucks. So, like, I'm just trying to motivate her, trying to get her to think she can do something different. But anyway, I don't know why. I just can't stand that she thinks that way. It's awful to watch. You know, you can lose a match, but to lose your cool and to lose your ability to manage yourself, that's almost a harder thing. Anyway. Again, how is self-esteem built? We've talked a lot about this, setting goals and reaching them, finding your unique qualities, figuring out what defines you, as Lizzie's talking about, positive self-talk, strategies. Again, you know, avoid being so, like if you can avoid and manage your anger, withdrawing. Everything does better when you're sleeping, eating, and exercising. So just remember that. I mean, it's, I don't know why psychologists are making millions of dollars by just telling people to eat, sleep, and take exercise. So we can do that without us. I'm going to be killed by psychologists. So focus on what you like about yourself and hobbies. Hobbies and sports and arts, all of those things, if you're involved in them, they've been shown to, again, mitigate against mental health concerns. So that, again, doesn't take psychologists or social workers or child-like people. Sorry about that. Gratitude. So again, there's another thing that's just proven to be helpful, to be grateful for certain things. And I did it lists, happiness lists, using positive self-talk, spending time with the people who are nice to you, finding things to treat yourself, but not only food every day, because people get in a crazy relationship with food, forgiving yourself, all of those things. I think kids who have troubles being able to help others really helps. A lot of times I've tried to get older kids to talk to younger kids about their surgery or about how they've managed situations. It often helps the person who's giving the help as much as the person who's receiving it. And again, just words about positive mental health, to allowing kids to have some advocacy and contribute to their own medical decisions and choices really helps them. Thinking about giving them explanations that you evolve as your child grows. Practicing kind talk. Again, this is something you model for them, but help them figure out how to give compliments, give support to others. I want to say just one word about compliments. Is if you find yourself when someone says that looks nice, you did that well, if you say no I didn't, or yeah, no, or actually it wasn't that good, I think practicing saying thank you when someone pays you a compliment is a really big gift, and you would be surprised. I think when you pay someone a compliment, 50% of people don't say thank you, they reject it. I think now you'll notice it when I say it. And you might notice it in yourself, that you reject compliments when people give them to them. And I think also being very careful not only to compliment kids on their appearance, is also a big one. You know, when my daughter was in preschool, every time she walked in the door, people made a comment about her clothes or her appearance. And they didn't do that with the boys. Just a gender difference. But one day when she was in preschool, she said to me, I need more dresses with smocking. And I was like, what is smocking? Like, she figured out what smocking on dresses is. You know, that's probably everyone here knows what that is. But anyway, she goes, because I get much more compliments when I have dresses with smocking. And I was really disturbed by that her whole view was, how can I walk in the door and get a compliment on my appearance? But in case anyone's worried about her, in 4th grade, I said to her, hey, that outfit, that looks good. And she said, thanks, Mom, I'll change. Anyway. So where do we go from here? Think about ways we'll change as a result. Hopefully I've given you some new information. But if not, and you have questions, let's make sure we get everybody in here leaving like they left today with some new information or something that they want to focus on for themselves or their child, something to try. I want everybody to think about their destination postcard and how you'd like things to be different in the next month or a year. You're much more likely to get there if you think about it. And that's the end of my presentation.